In the very beginning, chaos ruled the universe. It was the great nothingness. Boring? Of course. Perhaps the sheer blandness of all that empty nothingness forced Gaia, goddess of Earth, to spring into existence. Mother Earth Gaia was so full of fertility that she gave birth to two other primordial gods without having to mate with anyone. Gaia's two sons were named Uranus, god of heaven, and Pontus, god of the ocean. Together with Uranus, Gaia gave birth to several monsters and titans. Uranus felt a great deal of disgust for the children his wife gave him, so he ended up locking away the Hecatoncheires and Cyclops in his uncle, Tartarus, who was the underworld, far below the surface of Gaia. Another child of Gaia and Uranus was Cronus, who was the youngest of the first-generation Titans. The faith of his imprisoned brothers made Cronus more aware of his own vulnerabilities. Maybe that gave him sufficient ambition to overcome any fear, more specifically the fear of his father Uranus. Cronus ended up wounding his father, and the blood gave birth to the Erinyes, giants, and Malea. With Uranus being wounded, the Hecatoncheires and Cyclops were freed from Tartarus. Gaia was relieved that her youngest sons were finally liberated. Cronus, feeling the ambitious pride swell within him, took advantage of the situation and claimed the universe as his own. He now became the new king of the gods. But Cronus and Gaia had different reasons for wanting to hurt Uranus. Cronus despised the Cyclops and Hecatoncheires as much as his father and brother Uranus did. At the first opportunity, Cronus put his 6 younger brothers back in the underworld of Tartarus, greatly angering his mother at the betrayal. Despite his arrogance and cruelty, in some respects, Cronus's rule was viewed as a golden age. During his time as king of the gods, the Malea gave birth to the first humans. These men lived for thousands of years, but maintained a youthful appearance. This was a time of tranquility and nobility of spirit, and the young, fragile race of humans mingled with the gods. Cronus also married his older sister, Rhea, and together they had Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and then Zeus. With his scythe, Cronus became associated with the harvest and its celebration. His rule was filled with abundance. But when anyone does a crime, it's only natural for them to suspect that others may readily do the same crime against them. Cronus had betrayed his father and taken the crown from him. Why wouldn't any one of his children do the same to him? So Cronus ended up hating his own children more than Uranus had hated his. One day, before any of the children were born, both his mother Gaia and father Uranus asked to speak with their king, and warned him that he would also be overthrown as king by his own children. So, as each child was born, Cronus figured that eating them would solve the problem. This must have concerned the other gods horribly, but especially the children's mother, Rhea. After 5 children had been swallowed whole, Rhea vowed to never let it happen again. With the birth of her next child, Rhea cleverly offered up a swaddling cloth with the boulder wrapped inside, instead of her last son, Zeus. Cronus swallowed the cloth and rock and was satisfied that another threat had been removed. Rhea did not want her only remaining son to be discovered, so she took him to Crete. There, she found a cave wherein Zeus could be raised. Growing up in secrecy, Zeus learned to hate his father. And why not? Cronus wanted Zeus dead, and loved power more than his own children. Years later, when Zeus had become an adult, he chose the Titaness, Metis, as his wife. It had been said that Metis was the wisest being who had ever lived, and Zeus admired her for it. Metis told her husband about a potion that could force Cronus to vomit up the divine children he had swallowed, Zeus's siblings. Zeus figured that, with their help, he may be able to do something against his murderous father. Because it had been years since Zeus's birth, and years since Rhea had borne any children, Cronus was no longer concerned about the predicted threat to his reign. Even so, young Zeus decided to camouflage himself as a cupbearer. Such a job would give him the perfect opportunity to slip the emetic drug into Cronus's wine. Cronus, of course, liked the idea that others were eager to serve him, so he accepted Zeus as a cupbearer. And on that first day of Zeus's new duty, the young god slipped the drug into the drink, and the king of gods had his fill of wine, laced with a potion that would lead to his undoing. Suddenly, Cronus retched forward, clutching his belly. The vomiting had started. First, out came a huge stone wrapped in swaddling cloth. Next, it was a full-grown god, Zeus's slightly older brother Poseidon. Then came Hades, Hera, Demeter, and finally Hestia, in the reverse sequence in which they had been swallowed. As Cronus lay on the ground, moaning in his drunk and drugged stupor, Zeus and Metis escorted away each of the other gods as they came forth. Zeus and Metis certainly had something to celebrate, but this was not enough. Most of the other Titans would likely come to Cronus's aid. After all, he was their king. Then, Zeus remembered that his grandmother, Gaia, still wept because some of her own children had been locked up in Tartarus since their birth, first by Uranus and then by Cronus. 3 Hecatoncheires and 3 Cyclops would greatly improve his chances of beating his father. While Cronus was still befuddled by the drink he had been given, Zeus hurried down to the underworld of Tartarus. There, he killed the fierce dragon which guarded the entrance. Then, he threw open the door and bid his uncles to emerge. "Come forth, my uncles. You are now free." Together, they found a safe place to live on Mount Olympus while they plotted against Cronus. The Cyclops were so thankful for having been set free, they fashioned gifts for the gods who helped them. For Zeus, they created a lightning bolt that the young god could throw at his enemies. For Hades, they created a helmet of invisibility, which allowed the god to come and go unseen. For Poseidon, they fashioned a massive trident. Each of these weapons would be put to good use in the 10-year war between the Titans and the Olympian gods. Imagine battles of Zeus with his lightning bolts zapping every Titan in sight. Imagine Hades sneaking into the Titan camp at Mount Othrys and stealing all their supplies without anyone knowing, or setting fire to their tents. Imagine Poseidon poking all waterborne Titans with his massive trident. And picture the 3 Hecatoncheires hurtling small mountains at the Titans like rapid-fire machine guns. Ultimately, the Olympians won the war. Because Atlas had led the Titans in battle, he was given the special punishment of being forced to hold up the heavens on his shoulders. Quite often, in modern literature, Atlas is pictured holding up the earth, but this is a misconception. All of the other Titans who participated in the war were locked up in Tartarus. As a reward for their indispensable help in winning the war, Zeus let the Hecatoncheires, Briareos, Kodos, and Gyges, guard the gates to Tartarus to ensure the Titans stayed locked up. Amongst the Olympian gods, Zeus divided up the universe based on each god's individual attributes. For himself, he took the sky. This should seem obvious, because lightning always occurs there. Hades was given the underworld to rule. This included not only the incarcerated Titans, but all dead humans who made their way to Tartarus across the river Styx. Poseidon was given reign over the oceans and seas.